Zelensky thinks the UK doesn't love Ukraine the way it used to once. We will tell you all about it, but before that, if you're a fan of non-corporate fundatory news and analysis, you've landed on the right YouTube channel. Okay, let's begin. The United Kingdom, a significant participant in the Ukrainian conflict, has deployed considerable resources including weaponry, financial aid, mercenaries and military training to support Kiev's efforts. This support has positioned London as a primary advocate for the campaign against Russia, backing the neo-Nazi regime. Despite these contributions, a recent discourse reveals Ukraine's dissatisfaction with the extent of British involvement. An article by the Daily Mail referencing unnamed figures within the British defense sector highlights a palpable sense of disappointment from Ukraine toward the UK's commitment. Comparisons are drawn between the aid provided by Germany and that of the UK, with conclusions suggesting that Britain could intensify its support for Kiev. Additionally, Ukrainian officials have compared the British government's approach with that of France, lauding President Macron's aggressive stance while urging the UK to adopt a similar, more actively engaged position. In an era where generosity is measured in tanks and training sessions, the UK finds itself at the mercy of an expectations market. Having proudly led the charge with NLAW anti-tank rocket launchers and tanks, Britain seemed to bask in the gratitude of Kiev, only to later confront whispers of discontent. Despite dishing out over €5 billion in military aid and hosting numerous training programs for Ukrainian forces, the UK's contributions now appear to pale in comparison to Germany's more lavish €9 billion armament spree. Sources lament the dwindling of Britain's political clout with Ukraine, hinting at a weariness in sustaining support levels. It's a peculiar predicament, from being the front runner in military munificence to being nudged by Germany to up the ante. There are three reasons behind Britain going cold. Firstly, Rishi Sunak is not even a fraction of the warmonger that Boris Johnson was. Secondly, unlike its European counterparts who might still be under the spell of their own fervent narratives, the UK holds a unique position, closely aligned with the US and a key player in NATO's strategic theatre. This vantage point offers clarity, the belief that victory for Kiev is a distant dream and the Russian bear has no immediate plans to roam westward. Thirdly, due to the shadows of recession and inflation across the British Isles, the once overflowing coffers designated for international benevolence are starting to dwindle. The narrative spun by insiders to the Daily Mail paints a picture of a nation stretching itself to the elastic limits of its capabilities in its efforts to prop up Ukraine. Yet this magnanimous display seems lost on Kiev, whose appetite for resistance appears insatiable, failing to recognize the British plight. This disconnect has not gone unnoticed within the halls of British power.
First in Europe to provide lethal weapons, first to commit main battle tanks, first to provide long-range missiles, and now we are the first to keep the promise made at the last year's NATO summit, alongside 30 other countries, to provide new bilateral security commitments.
The saga includes pointed remarks from former Defense Secretary Ben Wallace, who in a moment of unvarnished honesty at a NATO summit suggested that a dash more gratitude from Zelensky might be in order. West's arsenal is vanishing quicker than anticipated, as if Russia is playing with a magnet under the board, making Western hardware disappear at an alarming rate. This unexpected magic trick has left the so-called defenders of the so-called democracy scratching their heads, with the manufacturing lines panting to keep up. The UK, once a beacon of military aid, now faces the echo of this conundrum, a harbinger of broader narrative unfolding across NATO's frontiers. The storyline pivots towards an inevitable climax, the wells of resistance drying up, as Zelensky stands firm, demanding an unending stream of support. The West grapples with the harsh reality that their inventory of goodwill and grenades has its limits. Do you know former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson was so popular in Ukraine that restaurants had started to name food items after him? Here is the video that explains Boris mania in Ukraine. Do watch.